Hi, welcome to this SimplyMaya tutorial. In this tutorial we're going to cover the process of complete lighting control in post-production from Maya. If you've seen the demonstration video for this, you'll understand what we're attempting to do is control light color and light intensity from every light we set up in a post-production process. This not only gives you the option of being able to create fancy light-based animations for anything from an interior scene from night to day without re-rendering every scene, it also gives you a degree of control over your lighting that's simply not possible with Maya alone. So we're going to jump right in, and you might notice here I'm using a standard grey colour material. This is because I didn't want this tutorial to become about us tweaking hundreds of textures, rather just about the lights. This will obviously work on a textured scene, an untextured scene. An animated scene is a bit more complicated with this technique, but hopefully you'll be able to derive what you learn from this and use it in your own scenes. So we're going to start right away by just giving this a mental ray material, because I'm going to be rendering here with indirect and direct illumination. So I want to start by just assigning a new material. I go to mental ray and pick a mere material X. I'm just going to make sure that it's not reflective, so I'm going to bump the reflections down to 0, and if we take a render of that, you'll see exactly what you would expect to see. Standard grey scene. There we go. So before I start to set up the lights, there's a couple of things I want to do. I just want to up the production value of this a little bit. So I'm going to go in and just change it to a HD 720, which is what I'll be rendering out my final project as. If you want to go higher than that, obviously it's possible. I'm also going to flip the quality tab, just bump the anti-alias into 1 and then 0.05 here. This will just give us a slightly nicer look without increasing our render time too much. So if we see here, so now we've got something we can actually perform some test renders with a render time of 5 seconds, which is fine. I'm going to flip on the indirect lighting here. Now I'm going to hit Final Gather. Now I'm going to use an accuracy of 30 and a point density of 0.1, which I find, especially for still shots, if you're not doing an animation, this is fine for Final Gather for your test renders, and I doubt we'll go much over 20 seconds with these settings. Okay, I want to introduce some secondary bounces into the scene, so I'll bump these up to 2, and I'll have to go down to Final Gather Tracing and bump this up to 2, 2 and 4. So now we'll get some secondary bounces, so I'll just snapshot that. And there we go. It's bumped up render time a tiny bit. I doubt it'll be more than a few seconds. So 9 seconds, 10 seconds, and you can see what those secondary bounces have done for us. They've bounced more secondary illumination around the scene. So for the indirect illumination for this scene, this is about it. I might increase the quality towards the end when we start to get some final renders, but for our tests this is fine. Now the first thing we want to do is stick in our first light, and in this scene there will be 7 lights, the 4 here, 2 here and 1 in the center. We'll also be using a mental ray light shader, that's actually a mental ray light texture, to get some glowing wires and some glowing light surfaces. But as we know, the point of this is to get this all out of Maya as painlessly and quickly as possible, get it into an application like Nuke or Fusion. In this case I'll be using Nuke, but you could use Fusion, After Effects, pretty much anything you wanted. These techniques can be applied to. So I'm going to go ahead and drop in a light, so I'm just going to create some lights here. So I'll create point lights, and these will be the basis for the top of these light tubes. Now before I actually put that in the right place, I just want to show you something. Now for me with this scene, I want it quite dark and spooky, and I want the contribution of each light to be seen very distinctly. So just dropping this in here is not really helping us a lot. One light is now illuminating the entire scene, and there's a couple of ways to deal with this. You can obviously go into the light attribute itself and lower the intensity, but that's still going to give you this sort of bold overall illumination. So you can use a decay rate. So if we go into linear decay and make this 5, you'll see that this light now decays quite a lot. In fact, it's decayed so much with an intensity of 5, I can't really see anything. So if we put that up to 15 and do this again, you'll see some decay. Okay, you can barely see here, I hope you can see it on the video encode, that this decay is not quite active and just quite bright here, but nothing else. So what I like to do when I'm lighting up a scene is add a photographic lens mapper on here. So I'm going to use the photographic exposure simple, and just by putting this on, you'll see a huge difference. Okay, now this has spread out our light, and it's given us a much more realistic light and feel. I can still see this is brighter nearer the point light, but the light's fallen off much better here. So I always use one of these when I'm lighting. It just stops you getting those overly bright hot spots. And if you're interested in more simple lighting, I have a tutorial on the site which is lighting for photorealistic interiors. You might want to check that out too. But for now, I'm pretty much done with this. We can obviously use more sort of excessive forms of decay. So if I go down to quadratic, you'll see the light decays a lot more, especially at this intensity. Okay, and we're back to just one bright hotspot. So with the quadratic decay, we'd probably have to go all the way to 50 before we started to see anything. Now, yeah, and I can just start to see this come in at around 50. Now, I'll bump up to 150 so you can get a look at this. Now, quadratic and cubic decays are quite useful for getting bright hotspots in your image. So, for instance, now we're just sort of lighting up this table a little bit and this lamp here without adding so much to the overall illumination of the scene. They do take a bit longer to render. It's not hugely excessive unless you're using lots of them, and obviously we're emitting no shadows with this, so we're getting a quicker render. So there's a couple of things you can do to get your lights looking a little bit more realistic. You can use the decay here, but as I'm using mental ray for this, I'm actually going to use a mental ray light shader. So I'm going to set this intensity back to 0, put it onto no decay, go down to the light's mental ray shader, mental ray tab, sorry, which you can see here. I already had mine open, but there you go. And under light shader, I'm going to just go to mental ray lights, and you could use the mental ray point light. In this case, I'm going to use the mental ray physical light, and I've got a feeling because this is now a physical light, it's dependent on scene scale, and this scene is actually 22 meters across. So at its default settings, you're probably going to see a very black render here. Yep. So you're getting about what we had with a quadratic decay of 150. Now, to increase the illumination on this, if you select the light itself and do what you would think would be natural, so make it 10 times as bright, you'll see nothing happens. Because once that light shader is connected to our light, it becomes purely a mental ray light, and all of its attributes are controlled through that light shader. So changing this, the point light attributes, will do absolutely nothing for you. I mean, I only set mine back to default there, because when you've got a lot of lights in the scene and you scroll through and you occasionally see a massively high intensity level, you can wonder why. So for problem solving, I like to leave this at default, so I know I haven't done anything with it. And then back down to light shader, and to increase the intensity of this, I actually need to increase here the V value. So if I make that 10 times as bright, excuse me, Maya's decided to, there we go. So I increase that to 10 times the amount and re-render. You'll see here that our light comes in a lot brighter, and it has it has shadows on it. All mental ray physical lights cast shadows. Our render time has probably increased by about 1 second. These physical lights take a tad longer to render, but that's fine. So I've got what I think now is a really nice fall off. The front of the image that would be illuminated is, and the back, we've got this, you know, kind of great fall off here. And with this scene, as we'll be using a lot of lights, I'm going to build up the light so each light only gives a smaller contribution. And I find when lighting interiors, this is a better way to do it than trying to use one great big huge central light, especially with something like this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this light actually inside this light cone geometry here. So I'm going to flip into my foreview, sort of position this just inside the cone. Okay, there we go. And if we look at our perspective view, there we go. Now the problem is if I render now with this light being inside the geometry, it'll cut all of its light off because it has shadows on, so it'll be blocked by this geometry. So I'm going to select this geometry and I'm going to go to its render stats, and I'm just going to untick double-sided. Seems like I've already done it for this scene, but you normally need to do this to let the light shine through. So if we take another render, okay, and you can see I'm getting the contribution of light where I would expect it. I get the circular shadow on the floor where it's being blocked by this rim up here, and I get this nice light fall off. Now this is a little dark, but you have to remember we're going to have 8 or 9 lights in the scene. We're actually going to have 7 lights, I believe, plus a few light surfaces, so we don't want to over blow out the scene with this just yet. I might jump into the outliner here and make it just a little brighter. So I'll just go, I wish Maya would stop doing that. Right, 1.5. And you can tint these lights with a light color here, but I intend to show you how to do all of the light color and the light intensity in post-production. So what we're doing with this is just getting an overall feel for what's happening. So that's one light set up, and the process is quite simple to set the rest up. I'm just going to go and create another light here. So I'm going to use point lights for all 4 of these cylinder tops. So I'll just get it into sort of basic position, hit the foreview again, go in here and sort of organize this to where I would expect it to be. I think I'm actually on the wrong tube here. Okay, there we go. Get it to the top again. If you put it too far towards the bottom, then the blockage of this geometry here will be more severe, so you'll get a larger circular shadow on the floor, and it's not really what I want with this. But again, depends on your light and scene and your light and setup. So you'll see here when we added this light, we need to add a light shader. Now you can go in and add another mental ray physical light, but I find all 4 of these lights for me are going to be at the same intensity. So rather than creating a lot of nodes that I don't need, I'm going to go into the hypershade, and under utilities I see a physical light. I'm going to middle mouse drag it into the light shader, and if I pop it open, you'll see it's already been set at the same intensity that I used for this one. So this is a quick shortcut if you're creating a lot of lights and you know you're going to be using the same intensity values and the same color for them. So just go in there and drag in the light shade you've already created. So as you can see, our light setup is kind of sort of coming together now. With these 2 lights in, we're getting this very nice, or at least I believe very nice, and you can see our shadows dimming out here where the light crosses over. So this is a nice thing with the physical light. It's fairly easy to deal with, easy to set up, and we go from virtually nothing to an almost complete light setup by just adding a few point lights. Now, with the lighting being controlled in post-production, we'll have such a fantastic degree of control that the work we need to do in Maya becomes simpler in a way. As long as we set up our lights correctly in the first place, you can complete this whole process in half an hour, depending on your scene. Go into the post-production application, tweak the lights, and you're done. So without further ado, I'll just duplicate that light, move it over to this one here, sort of get it into a basic position. Excuse me. On here, and then I will get it more precise. There we go. That'll be fine for that one. And I'll duplicate it again. So get it into its basic position. Just make sure we are correct on here. So there we go, and you'll see when I duplicated these lights, the light shader became disconnected, so we'll need to go in there and add it back in. So once again, hypershade. Utilities, physical light on here, and pop the outliner open, and physical light on here. Now we'll sort of get a clean view of this. And this should have set up our 4 center lights. Okay, I'm seeing no light contribution from the back light. Let me just stop this render because we don't need it. So what I think has happened here is what I warned you to watch out for, which was on this geometry I have double-sided. So you'll be able to see now that the light actually shines through the surface. And this double-sided will depend on your normals. So if you add a light and what happens is your geometry glows, then what you've probably done is got some reverse normals in there. So it's just something to watch out for. Okay, so I've got my 4 point lights here, but I would expect this top geometry to glow. So what I'm going to do now is just add a mental ray light surface shader. And I do this by just assigning a new material, mere material X, and I'm going to call this light top. I want to make sure that it doesn't have any reflectivity on it, and under advanced, which would be there, under additional color, pop this out, mental ray textures, mental ray light surface. Now you can control the color of it here, the intensity, and how much contribution it has to the final gather or the indirect illumination. But to do this, just to show you that we have a glowing light surface, I'll just grab this, and you can see this now glows. Now if I flip this over to blue, it's going to glow blue. Obviously it's exactly the same, exactly what you would expect to happen. And if I increase its final gather contribution, you'll see that this now imparts a blue glow to our indirect illumination as well. You can see it here sort of glowing through. I'm not going to want this, I'm going to correct this in post. So even though we render all of these out as a bright white, in the final image that you saw, the light animation we did, they were all different colors, and I'm going to show you how to achieve that within the post-production process. So I'm just going to select all these light caps and assign the light top shader to them. And if we take a look now, you should see we have our 4 basic lights set up. So there we go, the basic overall lighting is pretty much complete for this center part. Next we'll be lighting up the back of the room and this main central light here. But what I like about this, even with all 4 lights glowing in, we haven't overexposed this scene like a Christmas tree. The back is still very dark, and we come and add the depth of focus. This will really help us to create a main focal point for this image. So I'll be back in the next part when we will continue just setting up the basic lights in Maya, and we'll also then start up setting the render layers and render passes for export into your compositing application. I'll see you in the next part. Okay, welcome back. Here's where we left off in the last part, and I'm just going to continue this now by finishing setting up the last of our lighting sources and also our lighting surfaces. So duplicate this point light. I can just actually create a new one. Get it towards the back here. Duplicate it and throw it towards here as well. Now if I pop into the foreview, just to adjust these lights, see where we are. Okay. There we go. And with these particular lights, I want it actually downwards towards the bottom of the geometry, so it doesn't shine down, it shines up. But this is again personal preference, so you can take this whichever way you'd like. Just smooth that and grab the other light we have here. Move this one into place as well. Just making sure we're in the right central position. Okay. Now these lights are all one intensity, and so I've used the same mental ray light shader for all of them, which I can show you. If you remember, we just copied this one. For these two lights I want to use a different shader because I want to use a different intensity. So again, mental ray lights, physical light, and I'll just assign it to this one too, and I'll assign the same one, so up to our hyper shade. Under utilities, just drag out physical light shader 2, and this saves us from having hundreds of these physical light shader nodes, because when I come back later maybe need to tweak the intensity of these, even though we'll do a certain amount of intensity tweaking in post, which is the point of this tutorial, still nice to have some degree of control in Maya. So there you go, because I've got the same one, these will both be now set to the same. Okay. So let's make sure we do not have double-sided on these. We do not. And let's take a quick render. And even with this number of physically accurate lights in the scene, you can see here that our renders, they're not overly slow. They're within what I would call acceptable test render limits, which is less than a minute, preferably under 30 seconds. I'm not sure how long this one is going to be with 6 lights in the scene, but it's 23 seconds, which is fair enough. And I'm actually going to hook up the same light shader material we used on these to these. So light top. Okay, so that will just give us the glow on the tops of these objects that these ones have. And we want one final light now, which will be up here. So before I do anything, I will actually assign the glowing surface material to this as well, and create a new light. And for this I'm going to again use a point light. This technique works with any light, point light, spotlight, directional, whatever you like. I'm just using these point lights because, well, I'm kind of simulating light bulbs in this particular scene. So let's just check here that we're in the right place. Okay, it seems to be. And I'm going to want that sort of in this bottom piece of geometry. Actually slightly outside the bottom piece of geometry in this case, because I want to catch a bigger shadow off this and give it a bigger light contribution. And I'm going to add a new light shader to this, just so I can control its intensity separately again. And let's do a quick render and see what we have. And in fact, I think I'll just bookmark this camera position by clicking here so I can come back to it. Okay, I think this is not going to be bright enough, so let's just go up here and give this an intensity of like so. I mean, you can control your lighting in post, and this is obviously a very simple lighting scheme for Maya, but it is important that you get the basics right, because you do need that foundation to start to build on. So we'll see what we've got here. Okay, well, what we didn't get is that nice surface glow, so let me try and find out what material was on this. and we should now have it. We do not. Could be a normals issue. Yep, there we go. So if you're not getting that glow, it could just be because you have the normals a little backwards, which is fine in this case. You saw what I did, I just went to reverse normals. Okay, but I need this light to be giving out a greater degree of illumination. So let's flip open the outliner, select this light, and it's not, because it's sort of trapped in between a lot of different geometry, and I think it would be quite nice to have these wires here cast some shadows down here. So if I'm going to move that, okay, go back to our camera bookmark, and as with all lighting, it can take a bit of fiddling to get the result you're after. Okay, this has given me some shadows here, you can see, which would be these two wires. I have a geometry issue up here which I'm going to fix in a second, but for these two, let's make this light a bit more intense so I get some, brighter streaks on here. Just get the basics out of the way. Let's double its intensity and see what we look like. As these are taking 30 seconds now, 25 seconds, I'm going to start pausing in between them. Excuse me a sec. Okay, so I've got a brighter here, so we're almost done now with the basic illumination of this, and this would be the scene that we'll take into the post-production. And the nice light animation you saw on the intro video is done entirely from just this. But we got a few quality issues which we'll sort out. I also want to put on these glowing wires, so I'll select both of these, assign a new material, and again I'm pretty much exclusively using the Maya Material X. So additional color, go into mental ray textures, light surface, and if I now go like so, you'll see that we have glowing tubes, but they're not actually emitting any light. Now, we didn't use a final gather contribution in any of the other light surfaces we did, because they all have their own embedded lights, but this one does not, so we're going to add to the indirect illumination with it. So if we re-render this, you'll see here this is now actually created light. So you can use this final gather contribution to actually make these things glow. The higher it is, the better, the more effect it will have, but that's about enough for me. So the next stage of this, now we have our base lights in, is to slice every single light out into its own render layer. Now I'll show you what I mean by this. So at the moment you have one image with a contribution of all lights. What we want is a series of images with a contribution of just one light each. So if I go into the channels box, under render layers here, you'll see I have a master. If I select everything on it, which I've already created a group for the entire set, and just click the first point light, which is this one here, add this all to its own layer. When I render this now, you'll see I get the contribution from just one light. Okay, the problem is, although I get the contribution from just this one light, I also still get the light surfaces, which I really don't want, and I'm also getting this as well. So making sure I'm selected in this layer 1, and I'll just rename it to pole light front, and it is quite important to have correct names for these, or names that at least you understand, because when we come to render out the images from this, this will be the name of the image we're rendering. So if you've just got layer 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, it can make it a bit difficult to find out what's going on. So having done that, what I'm going to do is, making sure I am in the layer, is select all of these light surfaces, and just apply to them a standard Maya material, so the material we're using. And now when I render this out, you'll see just the contribution from this one light. Okay, so there we have it. This is the contribution from one light, and it's part of the way we'll be able to gain a significant level of control over this light in post-production is by slicing each light out individually, putting it on its own render layer, and rendering out, we will have 9 different images that we'll put together in post. So when we come back, I'm going to finish slicing out these render layers. Also, we're then going to add some render passes to these, and after that we'll be in Nuke to do the final composite. So I hope to see you for the next part, and I'll be back in a moment. Hi, welcome back. So we left off with our 2 render layers here, our master layer and our pole light front. And this is a useful technique as well for splitting out individual lights in Maya, not just for post-production, but when your lighting gets complicated and you have 10, 12 lights in your scene, sometimes it's easier for you to see what's happening if you separate them out into their own individual groups, or layers in this case, so you can see exactly what contribution they're having to your scene. So I'm going to go ahead now and set up the last of these render layers, and then I'm going to set up some render passes, so we'll be ready at that point to take this into post-production and get on with the stuff that's a little more interesting than this sort of basic lighting in Maya. So back to the master layer, I'm going to select the whole set, point light 2, which is here. I'm going to add those to their own layer. I don't actually want point light 1 as well, as that would defeat the purpose. I'm going to name this pole light right, and I'm just going to select all the light surfaces in the scene that I don't want illuminated, which will be these, and I'm going to assign back just our standard Maya Material X that we're using for the overall scene. Obviously if these were textured in your scene, then you'd assign back their original textures before they started to glow. So if we take a quick look at this now, and I want to just bookmark this one, I'll keep the image and render out our pole light from the right, and I've missed one. There you go. So it's always handy to do a test render. So I'll just assign here the standard material. And these material assignments I'm doing in these render layers are only valid for those particular render layers. If I go back to the master layer now, all our light surfaces will still be assigned. So that you can see the contribution from this light and the contribution from this light. You can see the shadows change, everything updates. So in this way, splitting out these lights not only gives us a great deal of control in post, it gives us a great deal of control in Maya to see what light is contributing to what shadow, what effect, and from there it allows you to tweak your light and set up with a greater degree of accuracy. Right, okay, so point light 3, we'll just select the whole set, control select point light 3 in the outliner, create another layer for it, and give it a name, pole light back in this case, select relight surfaces. And even when you're working with quite a few surfaces like we are here, this really takes no time at all. So assign existing material, there we go. Go to our camera view 1, and we'll take a render of just the backlight's contribution. And there's what that backlight is actually doing for us. It's casting this illumination in the back, as well as these nice shadows in the front here. Okay, so I'm just going to finish this off. So point light 4, the whole set, control select point light 4, add this to a new layer, left, forgot my left and right for a minute there, select the surfaces we don't need to be illuminated in this particular layer. Okay, just assign back the standard material. And once again, if you were using textures on these, you would just assign back the flat texture without any illumination to it. So we'll just check that that actually did what it was supposed to. It did. And if I go back to the master layer now, you will see the contribution of all the lights. So this is again a really nice way, something you might want to just get into the habit of doing, to get a look at what lights are contributing what to your scene. So I'll just bookmark that, and if I go back to the master layer, you can see that all the light surfaces will be illuminated and all the lights will work. So there we go. The master layer still has all the light surfaces, so any material tweaks you make while you're in one of these render layers is independent of the master layer, and they're all independent of each other. So this, again, one way of giving yourself a degree of control in Maya that you might not have thought about doing before. So back to set, and we'll do these back two lights. So select light 5 and create a new layer. Just call this one backlight left. Okay, and again select all these illuminated surfaces we're not going to be using in this particular layer. Oh, this one. Again, assigning the default material to them, and we'll take a test to make sure we just have the contribution from this one. Okay, we do. And I can see now from this that the contribution that backlight is giving out is not really as intense as I would like it to be. So because I have this on its own layer and I get to see just what it's doing, I can now come into here, go into our physical light shader under the light shape, and really kick the intensity of this up a notch. So again, this might be too much because we have it on its own layer. We won't be able to see its direct contribution. And there we go. That's maybe more of what I was looking for. Maybe it's a little too bright, but we can correct the too bright in post. So we'll bump that down. So that was our render layer. Now we've just got this light and this central light to do. So there's the central light. Here's this one. So again, we'll select the whole set. Select the light shape 5. Add a new render layer. Call it okay. I seem to have done the same one twice. Sorry about that. So just delete this render layer. Talking and working at the same time, not the easiest of things. Okay, so it's this light we were adding, so I want the complete set plus that one point light. Add them as a render layer. Backlight right. And once again, I think you know the drill by now. Just get rid of these light surfaces here. Do not want you, thank you very much. And okay, so if we now do a render of just this one layer, we should just get the contribution from this light down here. And there we go. So this is all our render layers set up, apart from the glowing materials, which I also want these two on their own layer. So this becomes pretty much exactly the same as we've done before, but this time we don't need to select any additional lights because these are creating their own final gather contribution. So I'll put these out and call them glow wire. Again, anything that makes sense to you is fine. Oh. And just get rid of all those glowing light surfaces. Okay, so if we do a render of this one, this will show you just the indirect illumination caused by that final gather. Of course, it would do that if we assigned the correct materials to those. Right, here we go. Okay, one thing you can see here, with just this causing this direct final gather illumination, we've got a very blotchy, very ugly render of these. So I'm going to go up to final gather and add a layer override. So what I can do here is increase the accuracy of this one layer without increasing the accuracy of every layer. Oops. So add some layer overrides. This will allow me, when I render these out for post, to have some layers that render really quickly because they don't need more accuracy, and some, with glowing wire and things that I might want to put some more accuracy on. I can do that. So let's also go down to Final Gather Quality, turn its filter on to 1, and if I re-render this now, you should see a bit better quality in this. Okay, so now I'm not getting so many of those nasty splotches, but you will notice it takes a lot longer to render. But by creating those layer overrides, in fact I'm going to stop this because I can already see it's about where I want it. So this would take quite a while to render, but by creating it as a layer override, I can go down, click another layer, and this will render really quickly. So I haven't actually made everything slower, just the bits we need, and this is another great way to use these render layers to create these sort of overrides. Okay, in the next part I'll be back and we'll just talk about the render passes we need, which we'll be setting up here, and then after that I promise you we'll be into the post-production and for the interesting parts. So I will see you again in a little bit, and thanks for watching. Hi, welcome back. I've taken the liberty of rendering out each individual render layer for you. So this is the contribution of the lights from each individual layer. What I have noticed is we've forgotten one. We've forgotten to do the center light. So before we do anything, I'm going to take care of that just by clicking this point light 7, which is actually the center light, control clicking this and doing it the same way we've done the others. So creating a new layer, calling it center light, and just removing all the glowing surfaces that we don't need. So I'm going to assign materials to these, just the standard material we're using, and I'll take a quick render of this just to make sure we have that light contribution we're looking for. And I've forgotten to remove these wires, so let's do that now. And let's have a look at what we've got. Okay, so this is putting our final pass back in, but I'm seeing a lot of noisiness on the final gather, and I think I can guess what's happened. This light surface has a final gather contribution attached to it that we do not need because we're using a point light for the light. So what I'm going to do is just assign any material to this, and I'm going to go in under its material attributes, give it an additional color, which again will be one of these mental ray light surface textures, and make sure it doesn't have a final gather contribution attached. Now when I render, you should see all this splotchiness disappear. Okay, and I can already tell by just looking at this that it has in fact disappeared. So we now have a nice clean render for our center light, which goes along with all the other nice clean renders we've got for all our other lights. So that's about it for our render layers. If we take a look at them, you can see here we've got all these 4 poles, these 2 lights and this central light, plus the glowing wires, all on their own layer. What we need to do now is add some render passes, because I want to be able to split each layer into diffuse light, into indirect illumination, and also I want to be able to split out these glowing light tops. So to do that, I'm going to select this layer first, go up to passes, click create new, and I want diffuse, I want indirect, and I want incandescence, and it's the incandescence value that will give us these glowing light tubes. So I'm going to just create, and then I'm going to assign them to this pass. Okay, then I'm going to go to every pass I want them assigned to, which in this case is all of them, and I'm just going to assign them to the passes. Simple enough. So each pass will now have diffuse, incandescence, and indirect. Each layer, will now have diffuse, incandescence, and indirect pass associated with it. If I was doing this with a textured scene, then I would also add into here some other things like reflections and refractions, and possibly even an ambient occlusion, depending on the scene. And if you want more information about render passes, there's a free tutorial on the site about it, so go watch that if you want some more info. Just going to make sure that I have these passes associated with all these layers, and I do. Master layer, I'm not going to be rendering it out, which is why it's off down here. And if you do only want to render out certain layers, you can just turn them on and off. And if you do your render at the end and you find you're missing some, just make sure you haven't inadvertently turned them off here. So we're almost there now to get this out of Maya and into Nuke. One last thing, if I look at the hypershade, you'll notice that all my Maya materials here are standard Maya materials. I need Maya material X passes because I'm rendering out render passes now, which is it's not supported by default on the Maya material. If you were using a Lambert or a Blinn or a Fon, you wouldn't have this problem. But with this, you just need to upgrade your shader to Maya material X passes. So grab all the Maya material X's we used and just upgrade them all to passes, and that'll work just fine now. So one final tweak that I'd like to do is just go into my common settings, make sure all this is correct, make sure I'm rendering out the camera I want to render out, change my file over from IF to OpenEXR, because I'm working with Nuke. Nuke works very well with OpenEXRs. In fact, it's Nuke's default native format, so this is why I use it. I'm also then going to want to go to the Quality tab, under Frame Buffer, render out a 32-bit image. OpenEXR supports 32 bits, and I want all the extra information that comes with this, and as I'm using OpenEXR, I might as well get it. So, other thing, just tweak my anti-alias in here a bit, because I'm not test rendering now, I want my final images out. Under my indirect illumination, I'm going to set this to 60, this back up to 1, and the rest will just be fine. If we go to the render layer with the wires, you'll still see that they have a layer override. Sorry, this one has a layer override, so I'm just going to also up that a bit, maybe this. But if I flick back, you'll see that all the other layers are on the default settings. Only this one that's lit purely by glow is on a layer override, allowing us to up the quality without increasing render time for every layer. And let me just flick through, make sure we're all good. Okay, so now we have all our layers and all our passes associated with all our layers, and now it just remains to render this out to get it into Nuke. So I will do that now, which I'll do by simply going to Render and then Batch Render, and you'll see down here that will start to render out all of our passes. Everything that has a green tick board here will render out. So I'll see you in a couple of minutes in Nuke, where we'll start with actually putting this together and doing some decent compositing. See you in a second. Hi, welcome back. We're inside Nuke now, as you can see, and the first thing we want to do is read in one of our images. So as you can so I'm going to load in pole light front as the first image we're going to use. And if I just connect this to the viewer, you'll see here that a lot more information has come into Nuke than we had originally in Maya. So, and also because this is in EXR, all the passes we rendered out, there's the diffuse, there's the incandescence, and there is the indirect illumination, have come out in the one file. So first things first, we will shuffle those out of this file so we can access them. Let me just, viewer seems to have, there we go. So I'm going to hit tab, type shuffle, and you'll see here you can have a shuffle node. So I'm just going to do that 3 times so we can shuffle out all 3 passes. Now we want to connect all 3 of these shuffle nodes to our image, and then we want to start to shuffle out information. So if we double click a shuffle node, you'll see here shuffle 1, and the first piece of information I want to get out is the indirect lighting. So indirect lighting to RGB, and I'm going to call this ind for indirect, because we're going to have quite a few of these, and so it's good to keep on top with your naming. Second one I want to shuffle out will be the diffuse. So again, diffuse to RGB, and the reason I'm not shuffling these out to RGBA is because they don't contain any alpha information, so just diffuse to RGB. I'm going to call this def for diffuse, and then the last one is incandescence to RGB. Now this is shuffled out, I'll call this ink for incandescence. Now this has shuffled out all of our information, so if I click one of these now, the indirect illumination, and hit 1, you can see here I have the indirect illumination. Click this one, hit 1, you can see the diffuse illumination, click 1, and you see the indirect illumination. And when I click one of these and click 1, it just assigns it to the viewer. I can do this, click 1, click 2, click 3, and you can see I have 1, 2 and 3 to the viewer now, so I can quickly jump backwards and forwards between them. Or you can just grab manually and connect it up. Okay, let me just get this so we can see it. Okay, let me make sure my viewer is playing silly buggers, and one of the things I want to do before I do anything else is I can see here my project is set at 2K. So if we just go to edit, preferences, edit project settings, and we come up here and we want to select our project size, which is 720p, so I'm going to hit new, I'll give it a name of 720 and 1280 by 720. Okay, and if I connect my image to the viewer, you can now see here what we have. So we've got these passes out: indirect, diffuse, incandescence, and what we need to do is connect them all together to make one complete image, which in this case will be the light contribution from this pole light. So we do this with merge nodes. We're going to need 3, so just press M on the keyboard to create a new merge node. You can also use these shortcuts up here. I find it easier to use the keyboard shortcuts, or hit tab and just type in the name of the node that you want, and you'll find it pops up here. In this case, merge is simple, it's just M on the keyboard. So I'm going to connect up the A channel here to all our 3 shuffled out passes, and I'm going to connect the B to the previous merge. Now you'll notice this leaves us with a spare B at the start of the chain. You can use this to connect in an overall alpha channel. In fact, it can be used for a lot of things. In our case, I don't really need it so much, so I'm just going to create a constant and connect B up to that. I'm going to change the operations of all of these nodes to plus, and connect this one to the viewer. And this is the contribution we had out of Maya. This is the incandescence, the direct illumination, and the indirect illumination. Now, having these passes in Nuke gives us incredible control of each one of these lights, let alone by the time we chain them all up together. So if I show you here, if I take the diffuse illumination, press G, which will add a grade node to it, and if you didn't have that selected when you press G, you'll see the grade node will come in and it's not connected to anything. You can just pop it in between and you'll see the arrow glow, or if you don't want to do it this way, unconnect A, connect the grade node, reconnect A to the grade node. So there's plenty of ways of doing that. If I select this grade node now and just go up to its lift, sorry, not its lift, its gain, you'll see here that I can add a huge amount of light to this diffuse illumination. So I have complete control over the diffuse illumination without touching this incandescence or the indirect illumination. Same thing, select it, push G, go for the gain, and you can see I can now affect that indirect illumination. In fact, I can turn the diffuse illumination way down and the indirect illumination way up. Okay, you can see it on this board here where we had some indirect illumination from light bounces. So combining this way of doing it gives me over this overall light a huge degree of control. I can basically light up the whole image now, and you can see here that all my shadow information is intact. and everything is intact. So what we're going to do is we're going to read in each image, split it to indirect illumination, in this case diffuse, direct illumination, and incandescence. And once we've done that, we'll have a level of control over these lights that's just not possible with Maya. We can also add color correction nodes in here, tint the color of the light, add specific glows just to the incandescence, and we'll get to all that in the next part. But this is the basic workflow for getting our render passes back into one image. So in the next part we will come along and we'll load in the rest of these images, split them all out into their separate passes and join them all together for a level of control over our lighting that should be then useful for us to not only tweak the lighting for one still shot, but create light animations and anything else we want to do. Also, the level of control we have in post, I think, as we've just demonstrated from this one small example, is far greater than the level of control we would have in Maya. So thanks for watching, and I'll be back in the next part when we'll continue with Nuke. Okay, welcome back to the Nuke part. Now, if you remember, what we've done so far is just shuffled out our indirect, direct and incandescence. We added a couple of grade nodes just so you could see what the attributes of each individual pass were. Now we're going to add in another image, which will be one of our render layers, so easier to demonstrate than to talk about. If I go in and I add the pole light left next, so here we go, and if I just connect this directly to the viewer, that's number 2, you can see that this is our left one, this is our right one. So once again we need to shuffle out our passes, and before I go there, because we're going to end up with a very large structure in Nuke, I like to keep my workflow organized, so I'm going to hit tab to bring up the node list and hit backdrop. Right, what this allows me to do is, whoops, hang on a second, it's come in the wrong place. So just get these nodes out of the way, push this over here. Okay, and you can organize your node chain in a way that makes sense to you. So I'm just going to surround all of these nodes with this backdrop. Then when I select the backdrop, I select all of these. So I'm going to rename this backdrop, double click it, rename it to front, and then I'll know anything within this backdrop, any node that's within this backdrop that I can grab here, will be dealing with just this one image, or our pole light front in our case. So over to our second image, and first things first, we need to shuffle out all of our passes. So once again, tab, shuffle, and again, shuffle, and again, shuffle. We know we're going to need 3, so make sure they're not connected to each other here. Connect them all to the image. And again, you want to make some effort to organize this in a way that makes sense to you, and you move around the Nuke viewport pretty similar to Maya. Alt and left mouse button will move you around here. So first things first, shuffles. So once again, indirect, RGB, direct or diffuse, RGB, incandescence. Okay, and I'm going to rename these as well, back to incandescence, incandescence 2, diffuse 2, and indirect 2. You can use different naming conventions, whatever suits you. So again, M for merge. Okay, if they came in connected, disconnect them, because they'll most likely be connected the wrong way around. So here we go, A, and A. Connect the B's up to the previous node in the chain. Okay, what we need to do now is make sure these are set on plus operations. And if we now connect this to the viewer, you can see here the light contribution that we have there from just this file, which is pole light left in our case. Now if I go ahead and put the grade nodes in here, I'll start to get that degree of control back on each individual pass. What I want to do now just quickly is to link up these two passes together. So if I take the B from this and add it into here, and then go to the end of our chain, which in this case is merge 6, add them together, you can see now that I've got all of the individual passes from 2 layers all hooked up together. And I can come here and sort of tweak what we would have as our overall lighting by just playing with the merge values here. We'll go more into connecting these up in a proper order a bit later, but for now I just want to start to get these images in, and once again I'm going to create a backdrop node here so we can keep our work nice and organized. Okay, just grab all of those nodes in there and call this, make sure we double click on it, there we go. Pole light left. Okay, so in this way we're going to build up a hierarchy between these render layers, which are here, the render layers, which are the main images, and the render passes, which are now here, and this will give us the degree of control that we need to organize this. Okay, so one thing I will do before we continue is I'll just select these grade nodes and hit D. This will turn them off, disable them. If you want to turn them back on, you can hit D again and this will re-enable them, just to avoid confusion, because these node chains in Nuke can get quite complicated, especially if you're new to Nuke. So what we've got now is a way for me to say turn the incandescence off. This, you can grab this incandescence, turn it off. I can grab the diffuse, turn it off, and each individual render pass is on and off, can be added with a grade node. You can add more, take it away. You can also use the merge to disable its contribution or enable its contribution to how much it's merged to the image. What we need to do, however, is to be able to turn pole light 2 off completely. I don't want to have to go into here and start turning off each individual one here. So what I'm going to do, and this will make sense once I actually do it, is add a merge node by pressing merge, connecting its A up to here and its B up to here, connecting it to the viewer by pushing 1, or obviously by grabbing it at the bottom here and just moving it over. Okay, now I have a merge node in between these two, so I've grabbed the background or the B channel here from this one and the A channel from here. So this is the merge node for the contribution of all these three. This is the merge node for all these three, plus over here. In fact, if I just slide this, you'll get an idea of what I'm talking about. I now have complete control over these lights. So not only can I control each render pass, I can individually turn off each render layer. So when we come back in the next part, we'll set up the rest of these render passes and we'll look at using some grade nodes, some glow nodes, some color matrix nodes, and a lot of other things to really sort of get into the heart of tweaking our lighting in post-production. But so far, this is not so bad. We have control over our lights. So for instance, off goes this light, and if I were to put, let's just bump this one up, and also I can also turn this light off as well. This merge node just turns off this light at the moment, but when I come back I'll show you how to turn this one off. In fact, when we come back in the next part, rather than playing around with any grade nodes, we're just going to get the whole structure of this node flow set up, and then we can come back and really start tweaking this thing. So I hope you found this useful so far, and I'll see you in the next part. Hi, welcome back. Here's where we left off last time with our pole light front and left in. I'm just going to continue in this and get all the lights in and build up our final image, or at least the rough draft of our final image. So I'm going to continue to read in an image here, and I'm going to grab the pole light left, which I have, the right one, sorry. Throw that in there before I do anything else. Add a backdrop. Okay, there we go. Just to keep our sort of work nice and organised as we progress on and get more and more of these. So first things first, we shuffle out the indirect, the diffuse and the incandescence again. So I just hit tab, shuffle, there's 1, 2 and 3. And if they come in connected together, just unhook them, same as before. Connect all 3 to our EXR and shuffle out our passes. So first pass, we'll shuffle out the indirect. For the indirect 3, we'll shuffle out the diffuse. And again, you can use your own naming conventions. I'm just going for speed here. Incandescent. Okay, now put the merge nodes in so we can connect them together, and I'm not going to connect this one to the chain at the moment. There will be method in my madness, which I'll show you in a minute. So hit M again for another merge node, A, B to this one, M once again, A of course, B to this one, which just connects, as you should know by now, all of our render passes up together here. Now, if we make sure our operations are set to plus, and you need to double click these to get them to change up here. Okay, the reason I didn't connect this one to this one and join the chain together is because I just want to check that the contribution of this is good. It's good. And to double check that, I can even just pump a temporary grade node in between this and the viewer and just turn the gamma up a bit. Okay, so I've got everything in there. Let's just disconnect it. And I'm just going to continue on now, getting all the other lights set up. So again, I need to read in, and I'll do the backlight. Okay, connect to the viewer, make sure it is the backlight. Before I do anything else, just to keep us neat and tidy, another backdrop. Okay, same operation as before. So all 3 connected to the image, and then just get out your various passes. So diffuse, indirect first. This would be number 4. And there goes indirect illumination. Sorry, there goes the diffuse, it should be. Again, one of the important things with naming them, helps you not to get too confused. And finally the incandescence. Okay, now just the merge nodes for this. So 1, 2 and 3. Just hit M, unhook them. B here, A, A, and A, and I just want to change these operations to plus. Okay, and now I want to check that this has come in okay. Doesn't seem very bright. Let me just intersperse this grade node. Okay, yeah, that seems to have come in. Take that out. Check the individual passes. Okay, I can see it here. It's quite dim, but it's fine. Once again, dim, but it works. And the incandescence, just fine. So the whole thing together. There we go. If we now connect these B's up, you'll now see those two and this B here. You'll see the light and information from all four of these lights, and with a grade node in here, that will obviously grade all four of those lights together. Oops, wrong one. Let's try a little bit of gain there. There we go. So now we have all four of these lights. Let's just get these two backlights in, this ceiling light and these wires, and we will be done with the sort of the basic node setup for each render layer, and then each render pass for each specific layer. And as you can see, the degree of control we're going to get with this is going to be huge. So let's continue. Let's read in the backlight. Okay, and before I go any further, I want to rename these two backdrop nodes. So let's just name this pole light right, and this one, remember to double click it, pole light back, and then I can just grab these and I can see at a glance what's doing what, which is very helpful. Okay, so same thing with this one, backdrop. And by the way, if you're wondering why these are different colours, there's not a huge significance to it. You can actually change the colour of these. So say you had a very important project one that you wanted a bright red, you can do like so, and this lets you, as you're scrolling around, take a look at, you know, some of your important backdrops. Let me just set this up to any old colour, doesn't really matter. Again, it just helps you along with the title to differentiate between these if you need to. And I'll call this back light left. That's that out. Make sure we got the right one. We do. Okay, so once again we're going to shuffle these out. So tab, shuffle. Okay, unhook them from each other. And it doesn't really matter which order you connect these in. Okay, and let's get our passes out. So first I want to do the indirect. Then the diffuse. And then the incandescence. Okay, let's just check those have all come out alright. So what I should be looking at here is the indirect illumination contribution, which has been set right. So maybe we just don't have a lot of indirect from this light. Let's just throw on a grade there so we can amplify it. Oh, there we go. So as you can see, it is not a huge amount of indirect illumination being thrown off by this thing. If I just tweak the gamma, you can see it there, so it is working. We'll come back and we'll tweak all these in the part where we get our overall light and look. For right now, I just want to get all these layers in. So check this, which should be the diffuse illumination, that's fine, and check this, which is the incandescence, so that's fine. Add in 3 merge nodes again. So we want to connect the A and A channels, and then as always B goes backwards. Okay, so if we look at the result of all this together, there you go. we only seem to be getting the result of our inker app, because these are set to over, and what they should be set to, of course, is plus. Should be quite easy on Nuke to see when you made a mistake like that. Okay, so there's the full contribution of this light, and once again we take a better look at that by throwing in a grade node and, you know, kind of playing around with it just to make sure it's okay. Yeah, it's fine. So remove this. So now we have the 4 lights in this middle here and one of the back lights. So if I just hook up this B to here, make sure it goes along in the chain. There we go. So we've got all 4 lights and their contributions. We're going to have to grade this at the end, obviously. Let's just get all the lights in first. So once again, you want a backdrop. Oops, and this one got the viewer stuck in it, so let's just move that out there. Read in. And let's get the one we don't have, so backlight right. And just connect that to the viewer by hitting 1. There we go. So as you can see, different light contributions there, obviously. And I just want to change this to backlight right. And I'm just going to go ahead and do this one. Should be diffused, of course. Okay, just check that these came out okay. So what we should have here is indirect illumination. And once again, just to get a better look, I'm going to stick a grade in between it. Okay, it is. Let's check this one. You can tell that's direct illumination straight away. And incandescence. Okay, perfect. Throw our grade node over there. Whoops. There we go. Just the 3 merge nodes that we've used for everything. So A, then A, B over here, B over here, and let's check the whole thing together. Once again, we're at over, should be plus. Hook this up the rest of the node chain, and voila. So we start to get our lighting back. There's just the wires now. And as you can see, here is all our different lights. So there's just these glowing wires now and the ceiling lights. So we'll just quickly get those in, and hopefully the most tedious bit of this will be over and done with. It is, however, a necessary step, so we'll just get on with it. So, center light. Okay, and backdrop first. Here we go. As I say, you can make this any color for your reference. We'll make this center light. Zoom in a bit to see it. Okay. And shuffle. Shuffle. And shuffle. Once again. Unhook them. Connect them all to the image. And indirect first. Should be 7. Oh. Oh, okay. I was not double clicking in Nuke, so this should not be indirect. This should be incandescence. This will be our diffuse, and this will be our indirect. Okay. Okay, the reason I'm leaving this in, even though it is a bit of a repeated workflow, is it can often be quite confusing when you see how things are joined together, especially when you're working with so much stuff. So I thought a better repetition might help if you were having trouble with this. Obviously you could have just fast forwarded, but hopefully you'd have learned something by not doing so. So once again, we're just going to put 3 merge nodes in. So I'll just hit M 3 times, disconnect them from each other. All the A's up together. Okay, connect this to the viewer. And once again, it looks like we've gone to over instead of plus. Okay, there seems to be something not quite right here. So let's just connect this directly to the viewer. Indirect. That should be incandescence. There we go. That should be that. And that should be that. Which I believe it is. I believe it's just a little dark at the moment. Yeah, there we go. Perfect. Okay, so the last one, I believe, we just now need to put those glowing wires in and we'll be finished with this. So, or we'll be finished with this part of the layout in Nuke, the tedious part, as I said before. Just make sure we have our glowing wires here. Got a viewport issue, excuse me a sec. There we go. Okay, so backdrop. In we go. And again, 3 shuffle nodes. I think you should know exactly what you're doing by now with this. And if you had more passes to get out, you'd just use more shuffle nodes, of course. Okay. There we go, that's that hooked up. That's that hooked up, and that's that hooked up. So, let's merge them all together. M 3 times again. Away with you. Okay, that's the contribution of 3 together. Okay, let's just put a grade in between here. Yeah, that worked. Okie dokie. So that is our 4 central lights, our 2 back lights, our main center light, and our glowing wires all connected up together. So let's just complete the chain here. Add a grade at the end of this. Put a gamma in of 2.2. bit high, but I just wanted you to be able to see it at home because I'm never sure how good the video is, how good the video quality will be. It showed an image this small, I mean, and there you go. We have all the lights in our scene all hooked up. So now I'm going to come back in the next part and show you how we're going to grade out individual lights to get exactly the look we're going for. I hope to see you then. Hi, welcome back. We left off with every one of our render layers being brought into Nuke and split into its individual render passes to create the final image that you see here before us. Now, this is very nice. It gives us a great degree of control. Every single light can be tweaked. Every single pass from every single light can be tweaked. And, you know, as I've said before, this will give you a much better sense of your overall lighting. This will allow you to play with a lot more options in real time than you ever could in Maya. For instance, if we want to take one of those backlights, so take this backlight right, and we want to take its color, let's say, and increase the intensity. Obviously it's just white at the moment, so all we'll be doing is increasing the intensity of the light itself, not the color. My apologies. And we crank the gain up. You can see that I now have this light adding different level of illumination just to its own particular thing. Now this is great. This gives us the control we've been looking for. The problem is that if I want to dim the whole light, I'm going to have to come in here into each of these merge nodes and start turning them down, one for the incandescence, one for, and this whole control structure gets a bit too much, you know, 3 for each one of these, and we only did 3 passes. If we'd have done 40 passes, well, you just couldn't do it like this. It just wouldn't work. So we're going to unhook all of these, so we end up with just this structure for each pass, for each layer, sorry. So unhook them all. Alright, there will be method to my madness. And now we're going to hook them back up again. So I'm going to hit M for merge. A will now go here. B will go up to our constant. Okay, if I hit merge again, A will go up to here. B over here. Okay, and I'll just connect this to the viewer. What this allows us to do is, and we must have the operations here set on over, we do. Okay, this allows us to turn off this light. This will allow us, oh sorry, I double clicked the same one. Turn off this one. Okay, so now we have a control over this entire block. Instead of using 3 merge nodes to control this, or more if you had more passes, we now have 1 merge node that controls this entire block. So if we start to put grade nodes and whatnot in here, we have 1 control that can be used to turn it on and off. If we want to grade this entire output from all of these passes, we can simply put a grade node in here now, and let me just double click that. Yeah, there it is, and change it how we want it. Okay, so I'm just going to finish hooking these up, which will give us the control we're looking for. So M, once again, background, foreground, M, channel B, channel A, whoops, unhook it, B, A, M, and B and A, M, B, A, M. Hook this one up to the viewer. Whoops, and they all need to be set to plus, of course. So nothing you haven't already done before. This is just giving us 1 control over each individual light. Okay, so if I wanted to come in now, and I can see my titles here, and turn off, let's say, just these wires, I can now come, grab this control, and there we go. So I'm going to intersect a grade node between this and the end, because the whole thing should be brighter. So rather than making each individual one brighter, I'm just going to create an overall gamma of, say, 1.5. And this is really just so we can see what's going on better before we do the final tweaks. So what I want to do is create a light animation now. And I'm going to create this light animation before I actually tweak any of these. So the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to set all of these layers to off. So turn off those, turn off that, everything to off. Okay, and I'm going to create the light animation that you saw in the introduction to this tutorial. Now obviously this is an extremely useful technique for purely post-producing lights in Maya. It doesn't have to be used for a light animation. I just thought by doing a light animation I could show you some more things in Nuke, and hopefully might create a clearer understanding of what we're doing and why. So first things first, I'm going to go up to my project settings, and I'm going to give myself 400 frames to work with. Okay, so I'm going to animate this light first. So on this mix I'm going to set a key, and this is the mix for this merge node. I'm going to go 50 frames, hit 1. Now this will do the same as Maya's auto key. You don't then have to go and set another key. Once it's keyed, it auto keys. So I can come here now and show you this. Why is that not off? Okay, because I slid it up. Silly me. Make sure this is on 1, make sure this is on 0, it is. And when I push play now, you can see this light slowly start to turn on. And there it is, maximum. So what we'll do is this one now, at frame 50, can start to turn on. So we'll set its key to 0, and at frame 100, this should be fully on. So we're back, first light comes in, second light comes in. Okay, and you can do this in any order. You can have two turn on at once, you can have them overlapping, so one's turning on while the other one's still becoming fully intense. But I'm going to do mine like this. So 150 for this one. Set its key, just jump to 200. Set it fully on, jump to 250. This one, set its key, 300, fully on. Okay, and here we go, one light, two lights. You'll see the shadows change as well, of course, as contributions from different lights come in. Okay, so there we go, 4 lights turned on over 300 frames. And maybe you want to make that a bit faster because it's a bit slow, but you have to remember this is 2 seconds in real time if you're at 25 frames a second. So this is a little faster than it appears here on the viewer. And I think there's been a slight mix up with this last one. Okay, let's just play that back again. I think that last light was coming in too slow. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. Perfect. So we are on frame 250. So I'm going to scoot over to the backlight here. Now frame 250 should be set to off at frame 300. Should be set to on. Do the same with this one, frame 300, set to off. Frame 350, set to on, and the center light can come in last of all, so set to off, and frame 400 set to on. Okay, let's, if you hit spacebar here, we can view this at full size. Okay, so here we have the beginnings of our light animation. No color in it yet, but this is fine. We'll grade this in a sec. Okay, we see why our center light did not come in there. Okay, 300. Okay, 350. 400. 1. There we go. Just forgot to set its keyframe. So now when we scroll about, we can see that these turn on and off quite nicely. We'll get some flicker in there and some other effects. The first thing I want to do is just go about color grading some of these nodes. So for instance, I want this first light that comes in to be a spooky sort of blue color. So I'm going to do this by clicking this. Oh, in fact, I don't have to click this, it's just quicker. I can just show you here. I'm going to use a color matrix. I'm going to intersperse that. You see it immediately goes out. If we set this to there, you'll see it's exactly the same. Red, green and blue. So if I add in more red here, you'll see here we've got a bit more red. If I put in even more, I've got a bit more red. Now, as this, I'll try and show you. Here we are. Just make this timeline a bit bigger. As this comes in, it's very red. As the second one comes in, it adds more grey, so some of the red disappears. Now, before I delve too heavily into sorting out that color matrix and doing the proper color grading, I just want to introduce a different color here. So once again, color matrix. Throw it in the middle there. And this is green, so this one should be green. In fact, if we turn this on, flick around on the timeline, you can see now that this one is coming in a green color. So the first one comes in green, sorry, the first one comes in red, the second one in green. Now we want the third one in blue. Okay, so the third one should now come in blue, wherever it may be. Hang on, I think my viewer has just gone to playing silly buggers. Let's just make sure we're connected. There we are. Okay, so our first light red, second light green, third light blue. Okay, fourth light is coming in white. So let's change that to a more orange color, and let's get just that. So let's add in a color matrix. And this doesn't have to be on a grey background. This will work regardless of if your scene has textures in it or not. Okay, so I'm going to go for a combination of reddish greenish color. Let's just take that out, and you can obviously experiment, get the color you're after. Let's just go straight to the viewer with this. Okay. Let's put a really strong color on this one. Okay, put an orangey color. Okay, let's try this. Okay, some red light, some green light, some blue light, some orange light, okay, so that's the basic start of our light-based animation and how we color corrected our lights with a very simple color matrix. Now you have the ability to come in here now and take each individual slice of this. So if we look at this when it just has this light on, if we use the color grade on our pole light front under the diffuse lighting and we color grade this, we can obviously now have a massive impact on how much light that each one of these is putting out. So I can have this light put out a huge amount of red. When I throw in the green, you'll barely see it because this has totally overwhelmed it, as you would expect with a massively bright red light and quite a dim green light. As I dial this down, you'll see the contribution of the green becomes much more pronounced. So really, and you can do this again with the incandescence of each and every single light in the scene. So the degree you have here of what you could do is, well, quite frankly, quite staggering. The options available to you at this point become huge. When we come back in the next part, we'll look at some glows and some lens flares for our lights, because with this sort of brightness I would expect these to have some sort of glow around them. I'll also show you how you could add effects like volume, volumetric lights, and really how we can make this a bit nicer by just continuing to tweak our lighting and get it to where we want it. So I hope you found that useful so far, and I will see you back in the next part. Thanks for watching. Hi, welcome back. Here's where we left off with the beginnings of our simple light animation, and this is more really a demonstration of the control we have now. And what I did notice as I was scrolling through is I forgot to pick a point to have these wires light up. So I'm going to do that at frame 225. I encourage you to experiment with this. I mean, that's the whole process. Gives you the sort of scenario where you can experiment with things like this without having to re-render another 25 frames. So let's come in here and set a key on, which mix node is it? 32. Let's set a key of 0, and I'll have these wires come in by frame 300. So at frame 300 I'll have them on 1. So now they sort of come in here, and as I say, you can experiment with that if you'd like. It might be having a better idea to have this come in first and then the wires, but easy enough to fix, and we didn't have to re-render out hundreds of frames to have a look what it looked like. Right, if I just let that run back, Nuke will sort of get it into memory for me. There we go. Now from here, what I would normally do is first of all get the colours in the room I'm happy with by individually grading each one of these, because I like to be able to tweak all three of these. I like to be able to tweak the indirect illumination, the direct illumination, but just for the sake of expediency for this tutorial, I'm going to grade the whole lot at once here. So if I select my merge node and hit grade, and what I'll do is I'll actually put the camera out from color matrix 1. So all we're seeing now is this up until here, and I did that by clicking it and just clicking. I actually clicked 2 on the keyboard, so when I click 1 I could go back to my main one. So click this, click 2, separate your viewer out. Take our grade node here and get the amount of color you want this light to give off. So I want a little bit more redness than that, and I want it to light up a bigger area of the room. Okay, I can also control its black point, by which, I mean, if I give it a bigger black point and then a grade again, you'll see I get a much brighter level of color without illuminating the background so much. So, I mean, this black point is very sensitive. So let's have a look. I don't want that much. Okay, that looks good. Now I'm going to go on to my second one and grade this. So I'm going to click here and just click G for grade. Okay, And what I'll do is I'll just connect this color matrix to the viewer now by hitting 2, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to give this a brighter color and possibly make its black point just a little bit. It's a bit too much. A bit more color maybe. And now if I click this and hit 1, I can see the combination of the two. So I can see a real green here and a real red here. And as I go back through the two, that's sort of the contribution I wanted from these lights, without having to set anything up in Maya, without having to re-render, you know, without having to spend ages on it. So I'm going to go to 3, click the output from that, and this is this really nice blue color, but I'm not really seeing it strongly enough. So once again, hit grade, get it. Oh, do not want lift, gain. Okay. Now what I might do with this is add here, as well as a grade, I might add a color correct. So just select this and push C for color correct. Crank the master saturation up. Okay, that's not doing a lot for me. Why not? Because we need to put it between the color matrix. So once again, C for color correct. Okay, now crank the master saturation up, and you can see that I get a much more intense blue. It's just an easier way for right now than playing around with that color matrix. So send these 3 back to the viewer, and there we go. I'm starting to get these really bright, intense colors and the amount of illumination I'm looking for. Okay, and all I've done is graded and color corrected them. I'm just going to grade the back one. Oops, I want it before the color matrix. So let's grade this back one. Hit 1 on the viewer, so I just get the contribution from this. And let's give it a bit more. We'll keep clicking lift. Let's give it a bit more gain and a bit more black point. There we go. And a bit more gain. So I get a brighter, intenser green hotspot. And once again, I think I would like this a little more green, so I'm going to click color matrix and this hit C, and this will put a color correct node after the color matrix. Turn the saturation up to give me a little more green. Okay, it's kind of perfect. Now I'm just going to let Nuke play this back. So I will scroll along to the end node and hit play. See, I don't know when you notice, but these red, green and blue lights merge in the middle here, and it goes back to grey, because obviously the merging of them is creating a white light. So if this was a textured scene, this would work exactly the same as it does on a grey scene. The only reason we used this, as I said, was because I wanted to show a greater contribution of lights, and the easiest way to do that is on a plain, clean background. Okay, one thing I would expect to see is I'd expect these lights to glow, and also I'd expect this not to be quite so white. So we're going to deal with that now. Let's go to frame 50. Let's go back to our first light. Now to deal with the glowing issue, and this is where it really helps to have separated these out, because if I just had the diffuse lighting contribution, which would be this, and I asked it to glow, so I just press tab and put glow in there, you can see this glows, but so does this. If I turn the brightness of this glow up, all of a sudden half my scene starts to glow, and that's definitely not what I wanted. By having just this incandescence, I can pop a glow on just the incandescence, and you start to see that I just get an incandescent glow. Now, if I remember rightly, this was our red light, so as you can see, and now it's red tinge on it, and the glow is too much. So what we'll do is we'll take its brightness down until it just glows enough for me. There you go. I just expect a small rim glow, and we play that in for animation now. Oh, excuse me. There we go. Just going to select this on the viewer, so we'll just be playing this part and glow. Okay. Unfortunately, our thing here is still very white, so I'm going to take just the incandescence again, put a color correct on it by pushing C and changing the master saturation a bit, which still might not do it. Let's go for the contrast here. Okay. Let's just get it where I want it. Okay, so we're not actually achieving a lot with that. It's nice and red when it comes in, and then bright white when it comes out. Okay, we will come back to that in just a second. I don't want to spend too long on any one area, because my the whole point of this course is to give you a broad overview of how to do this, not to get stuck on some tiny minutiae. So okay, so we'll add a glow to this second light, so we'll come from the color matrix here, just add a glow. That's too big, so we'll take the glow brightness down, and again this is personal preference, how much glow you want on yours. There we go. And a final glow. I want to show you one other thing. You don't have to use a glow, of course. You could use a flare effect. And let's just take the viewer over to here, and you'll see here this position. So you can position, and this becomes a flare. They have some presets for this, so you could try bright, which will give you this huge glowing bright ball. And if you go back into the settings, you can do things like corners, so you end up with more of this type of thing. So once again, you can see I either have the glow effect or the flare. You can really experiment with that and take your pick. I'm not going to cover each individual setting of the node, because you can pretty much see it in real time, so just have a play around with that yourself. So let's have a look at these glowing lights as they come in. Okay, looking pretty good. Let's just change this flare to a glow, as I'm not going to use it, just thought I'd show you that it is there. Oh, another thing I'd like to say is some volumetric lighting effects you could also add, volume rays for instance. And because we've pulled out just this incandescence, you can do things like this. Okay, so if I animate that over time, now if you were doing an exterior shot and you wanted sunshine rays coming in through the window, this is a great way of doing it in post. You know, it really does give you such options in the way you want your lights to work. So there you go, there's these volume rays. I'm not going to use them for this tutorial, but nice thing to show you just in case you ever need them. So I'm going to hit this and just throw in a standard glow. Okay, it's too bright for me, so I'm going to whack its brightness down quite a bit. There we go. And last but not least, we want to get this back one in. So add another glow. Oops. Press tab first, glow, there we go. And way, way, way too bright. There we go, just a little bit. Okay, these wires should most certainly have some glow. Let's pump the volume. So what we want to do here, this was the incandescence, it was, I forgot to name it. That's when it gets a bit confusing, when you're scrolling backwards and forwards like this and you suddenly come across shuffle 2. But anyway, we know what it is, so let's just add some glow. And you can see we can glow the whole thing up rather nicely. Put a tint on that glow. Depending on what colour you would like. I'd quite like a blue, I think. A bit of a lightish blue. There we go. That will do us. Okay, and if you get your whole result at the end and you want to make the overall thing brighter, remember you can drop in some grades or color corrects at the end of the chain as well. So if we were to hit grade here, right at the end of the chain, this would then grade every single layer all together. So if I put some lift up here, I wish I'd stopped clicking that lift, it's never what I want. If I put some gain up here, you can see we can start to tweak, and also black point if you wanted more drama. But I am going to leave that for now. That's pretty much, I think, what we had on the introduction to this video. So we've done light intensity, light color, light glow, light flares, we've done light animations, and we've done, you know, a huge amount of control over each individual light in the scene. I'm just going to come back to this for the final part of this tutorial, and what I'm going to show you is how to create your own Nuke nodes to get some of these lights to flicker. Maybe you wanted them to flicker on and off. I'm going to do some work off screen on some color corrections here and some grading just to get a final better look for what I'm after. I'm not going to watch you sit through that process, and then I'm going to show you how to render all this out into a 400 frame animation. So hopefully you'll join me for that, and hopefully you've learned something, and I'll see you in the last and final part. Hi, welcome to the final part of this tutorial. Now, as you can see, I've gone ahead and made a few minor tweaks, the biggest of which is I've added a depth of field in the background here, which I am going to show you how to do. I did some minor tweaks to these light halos, really nothing that you can't or shouldn't be able to do with just your grade, color correct and glow nodes. So we've got out as far as this. Now the last things I want to show you are how to write your own Nuke nodes, and I'm going to cover this one very quickly because I thought it might be an idea, and I'll just disable this depth of field, so select its node and push D. I thought it might be an idea to have these lights flicker as they started to come on. Now in Nuke it's very simple to write your own node. I've got actually a script that I've written here already, so I'm just going to copy and paste this. I'm not going to go through every single line. The most important one here is this value random, which is pretty much the entire script, and I'll show you what happens when I put this in Nuke. So I'm going to go up to script command, just paste that in, it's TCL, hit OK, and you'll see here I've actually created my own node called SimplyMaya random. If I add this in here and hit go, you'll see our light here flickers. This node, being a standard Nuke node, can now be keyframed, though any node could be keyframed. So I'm going to put it off, going to run up to say frame 25. Well, I'm going to put it off, oh sorry, set key. So frame 20, say 35, I'm going to put that up to 1, have it flicker just a little bit, put it back down to 0, and as I play this in now you'll see a light flicker. There you go. So anyway, there's a random node for you in Nuke. That will help you with any light flicker, and I'll include all this with the tutorial, but there's how you start to write a basic Nuke node. Okay, I don't want to cover it in detail. I just thought you might want to be aware that, you know, you can write your own nodes. Very, very handy feature. Please look into that. So, depth of field, which I will show you now. I just generated it in Maya. Quite a simple process. Let's go back to the beginning. So I'm going to select my lab set, add it to a new render layer, which we've done many times before. Go to its attributes, under presets you'll find, should find depth, luminance depth, there we go. And if I make sure that I'm now on this channel and I render, I'll get a render like the one you just saw. Hang on. Okay. There we go. Didn't quite take the first time. Okay, my luminance depth there is absolutely terrible, so I'm going to break this connection, and I'll start off with a value that's probably somewhere in the ballpark. Okay, too dark at the back, so I'll half this, and you're going to have to play around with this depending on your scene size. But what we're looking for is a nice black bit at the front, and everything that's further to the camera should be lighter, further away, darker. Let's try this with a 4. There we go, perfect. So we'll just save this out and call it depth 02. And now we need to feed this into Nuke to do a depth of field. So I already have one here, I'll get rid of it and get rid of this too. So I'm going to first read in that depth image, which would be somewhere else. Okay, there it is, depth 02. So first we need to bring that into Nuke, and now we need some way of feeding it all the way along this chain as a depth pass. So to do this I'm going to use shuffle copy. No, I'm actually going to use shuffle copy, not shuffle. There we go, feed number 1 in here, and what we want to do is shuffle out the RGB to depth. Now if I connect this to the camera you won't see anything because it's only being used, or it should only be used as a depth map. Okay, so it's not actually being used as the depth. There we go. Okay, so this is only being used as depth now. Shuffle it onto RGB, nothing there. So this is how we get a depth pass in. Connect this to B. There we go. And if I hook this up to the viewer, you won't see anything. But if I tell Nuke to display the depth layer, there's my depth. And this should be valid all the way to the end of this chain. So if I connect the end of the chain to the viewer, and there we go, you'll see what you expect to see. If I go up to here, depth, I'm getting that depth that's being fed from this image, shuffle copied into the depth layer, and then all the way through the chain over to the end. Okay, the most important thing is that this layer doesn't sit atop our image. It's actually being placed into Nuke as a depth layer. So after we've done that, what we need to do is here add a Z blur, which is used in Nuke for depth of field quite a lot, and just intersperse it between this one, the end Nuke in the chain, and the viewer. Okay, so you can't really see a lot, but if we double click the Z blur and hit focal plane setup, you'll see it's all blue. As I slide the focus plane up here, you'll see it goes from blue to red. Okay, blue will be in focus, or the start of your depth of field. So if I click this now, you'll see that our background's gone slightly fuzzy, and if I increase the size, you'll see a much more depth of fielded image. So as you can see, our background has become completely involved with this depth of field, so that's probably too much. And again, if you change your focal plane, you can pull this forward, take it off, so you can see now that this is more blurry and this is more in focus. So really I've just got the table in focus. Everything else is encompassed with this depth of field. So I leave you to play with that, but that's how I did the depth of field. I just rendered out a quick depth render layer in Maya, fed it into a shuffle copy, RGB into the depth, fed it all the way through the node chain to the end where we came to the Z blur. Okay, now there's many small tweaks that can be done to this now, but hopefully I've shown you enough that you can go ahead and get on with those yourself. I'm just going to show you how to write this information out of Nuke. So press W on your keyboard, you'll get a write node. Make it the last node in your chain, because obviously you're going to want to write everything out. give it a file. So I'll just pop this in my E drive, and I'll just call it test. Now if I just call this test, say PNG, nothing will happen. It will just render one frame. Doesn't matter how many frames I tell it to render, it'll just say cannot be done over multiple frames. This is because it needs some frame padding. Easiest way to do this is to use hashes. So this is 4 frame padding, so this will be 0001, 0002. If you want less, take some away, add some extras in, depending on the number of total frames that you're going to render out. I'm going to use 4. We'll only be doing 400 frames for this, and what I think I'll do is just go up to my project settings, give this 450 frames, so after all the animation's finished, it actually just stays on the last frame for a couple of secs. Okay, back to our write node. This will now write out files called test 0001 to 0400 in this drive. You can leave everything as its default. Hit render, frames 1 to 450, and if I hit OK now, this will just go ahead and render out all 450 frames. So I think that's covered everything I wanted to cover in this tutorial. I really hope this has inspired you to take some of your own interior scenes and light them up. Obviously we use this cartoony sort of bright interior to really show you the different contributions from each light, but I hope to see some of your work at some point on the forum. So thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this tutorial.